Okay, so get this. Salt in your shoes. You sent me this YouTube video, Putting Salt in Shoes Changes Your Life Forever, Zen Story from Hidden Awakening. And I gotta say, my first reaction was like, is this some kind of like wellness prank or something?
Right.
But then the more I actually like looked into it, the more curious I got. Such a weird concept. But the video mentions all these potential benefits like less stress and grounding and even boosting your like well-being and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I figured for this deep dive, let's just figure this whole thing out. Like, is there actually something to this whole salt in your shoes thing? Or is it, maybe a bunch of woo-woo?
Well, it's interesting how the video, presents salt, isn't it? It's
right.
not just like your average everyday seasoning, It's practically like a magical substance, steeped in all this history and cultural significance.
Yeah, like I literally sprinkle salt on my food every day.
Yeah.
And I never once thought it was like holding like the secrets to inner peace or anything.
Right.
So where do we even begin to like separate fact from maybe a little bit of fiction with all this?
Well, I think, let's start with what we do know. Like, we know that salt is a natural crystal, right? It's got those grounding properties.
Okay.
And grounding itself is like an established concept in a lot of different like wellness practices. It's basically all about reconnecting to the earth, literally or even symbolically, to kind of promote stability and calm. And there's even like some research out there that suggests that, grounding can even help regulate the nervous system. Like it can reduce stress and even improve your sleep and all this.
Okay, so there's some real science behind this whole grounding idea.
Yeah.
But the video goes a step further, right? They're claiming that that salt can actually like absorb negative energy. They even tell this whole story about a woman named Sarah. She started putting salt in her shoes and she swears it helped her focus and like feel less anxious. I don't know. Is there any scientific basis for any of that? Or is that, was that getting into more like a spiritual kind of realm?
Yeah, it's unlikely that the salt is like literally sucking up bad vibes or anything like that. But let's think about it this way.
Okay.
What about the physical sensation of like those salt crystals under your feet? I mean, that tactile stimulation could act like a subtle but consistent mindfulness cue, right? It brings your attention to the present moment throughout the day. And wouldn't you agree that just having dry, comfortable feet just kind of generally improves your mood anyway?
That's a really good point. I hadn't even thought about it like that.
Yeah.
I know when my feet are like sweaty and uncomfortable, I'm definitely more irritable.
Yeah.
So in a way, the salt by keeping things dry down there could actually be contributing to just like an overall sense of well-being, right?
Exactly. And there's even a potential link, between tactile stimulation and stress reduction. There's some studies that have shown that applying pressure to certain points on the feet can actually activate the parasympathetic nervous system. Yeah. And that's the system that's, responsible for calming the body down. So, even though it might sound strange, those little salt crystals pressing against your soles could actually be having a real physiological effect.
Wow, I'm actually starting to see how this could work. It's not magic.
Yeah.
But it's tapping into these like real biological mechanisms.
Yeah.
This is impressive. But the video also talks about the like ritualistic aspect of this whole thing.
Right.
Like the intention that you put into, actually placing the salt in your shoes.
Yeah.
And they kind of connect that to these bigger, broader ideas of, like self-care and mindfulness and all that. What are your thoughts on all that?
Well, even if we, set aside any inherent like magical properties of the salt, the actual act itself could still be beneficial. Imagine just taking, a few moments each day to just consciously sprinkle those salt crystals into your shoes, right? It's like a mini ritual. It's this deliberate act of self-care. And that intentionality, that focus on your own well-being, that can actually be a really powerful mental shift.
So it's kind of like how, some people find comfort in like lighting a candle before they meditate.
Yeah.
Or maybe taking a few deep breaths before they start their workday.
Exactly.
It's not about the object itself. It's about the meaning and the intention behind it.
Exactly. And there's actually a growing body of research on, the placebo effect and how how powerful our beliefs can be in shaping our experiences.
Mm.
So, even if the salt isn't directly absorbing like negative energy, the belief that it is and the ritual surrounding it, that could actually create a positive feedback loop, leading to genuine feelings of calm and grounding. I mean, it really is fascinating.
It really is. I came into this, thinking it was all a bit out there, but now I'm kind of starting to see the potential here. It's not about the salt, like magically like curing everything, but it's about using it as this tool to tap into these other practices and principles that do have a basis in science and psychology. And I'm actually kind of curious to try it now, even if it's, just for like the mindfulness aspect of it all.
Well, before you run out and buy a huge bag of sea salt,
right?
let's talk about the practicalities, right? So the video suggests using coarse sea salt, and sprinkling a small amount in the soles of your shoes, the ones you wear regularly, and leaving it in for as long as it feels comfortable.
Okay, that sounds pretty straightforward. Are there any downsides or things that people should be aware of?
Yeah, I mean, I think comfort is a big one. Some people, they might find it irritating or uncomfortable, especially if they're kind of sensitive to textures. And of course, it's not going to be like a miracle cure for anything, right?
Right.
It's important to approach this with realistic expectations and a sense of experimentation. What works for one person might not work for another, right? The key is to just pay attention to your own experience and just see how it feels for you.
Good point. It's not a one-size-fits-all solution. It's about finding what works for you individually. Okay, so salt in shoes probably won't magically solve all our problems.
Right, but it could be this surprisingly effective tool, for incorporating grounding, mindfulness, and a little bit of that intentionality into our everyday lives.
And maybe that's the most valuable takeaway here. That sometimes the simplest things can have the biggest impact, especially when we approach them with intention and an open mind. So what do you think? Is there more to this whole salt in shoes thing than meets the eye?
I think there might be. But to really understand its potential, we need to kind of dig a little deeper into these underlying concepts of grounding, mindfulness, and the power of intention. What if we shift our focus from the salt itself to the broader themes it represents?
That's interesting. So we're not just talking about salt in shoes anymore. We're talking about how we can use everyday objects and actions as tools for well-being. I like where this is going.
Right. Yeah. It's like this salt ritual reminded me of other practices, where people use these everyday items and they kind of take on this deeper meaning through their intention. It's like how some people use crystals for healing, or how about, burning incense during meditation.
Okay. But those examples, I don't know, they feel a little bit more spiritual. Can we find this kind of like intentional grounding in less, I don't know, esoteric kind of practices?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, think about something as simple as like, lighting a candle before dinner.
Right.
It's a way to kind of mark a transition, to signal that it's time to relax and enjoy the meal, right? Yeah. Or how about even keeping a gratitude journal? I mean, you're literally using a physical object, the journal, to kind of focus your thoughts on positive experiences, and that can have a real impact on your mood and your outlook.
So it's about transforming these mundane activities into these mindful moments.
Yeah.
Using objects or actions to kind of create this mental shift. I like that.
Yeah, and it's not really about the object itself, right?
Right.
It's about the meaning that you attach to it. Like a seashell that you picked up on vacation, that could become like a reminder of peace and tranquility, just like that candle kind of signals, dinner time. It's about finding those personal anchors that resonate with you.
So instead of focusing on whether or not salt like actually absorbs negative energy or not,
right,
we should be asking like, what can this teach me about being more intentional in my daily life?
Precisely. And that leads us to this fascinating question. If salt in your shoes can become this tool for grounding, what other like everyday objects or actions could we kind of reimagine in a similar way?
That's a really cool thought. Like, I don't know, like instead of just mindlessly scrolling through social media on my commute, I could use that time to practice gratitude or do some deep breathing exercises. My phone becomes less of a distraction and more of a mindfulness tool.
Exactly. Or maybe you take a few moments each morning to arrange a bouquet of flowers, right? And focus on like the colors and the textures and the scents. It's not just about making your home look nice. It's like this sensory experience that kind of grounds you in the present moment.
Oh, I love that. I'm starting to see these everyday objects in a whole new light. It's almost like a game, finding ways to infuse mindfulness into the mundane.
It is a bit like a game, isn't it?
Yeah.
And a very beneficial one at that, because these little moments of intention, scattered throughout your day, they can really add up to a significant shift in your overall well-being.
This is really making me rethink my whole approach to self-care. It's not about these grand gestures or expensive retreats or anything. It's about finding those small, accessible moments of peace and grounding in the midst of everyday life.
And that brings us back to the central question of this whole deep dive, right? Is this salt and shoes thing, legit, or is it just a bunch of woo woo?
Okay, well, I'm not sure I'm ready to start filling my shoes with salt just yet, but
Yeah.
but I do think there's something to this idea of using everyday objects as these reminders to be more present, intentional, and grounded.
I agree, and I think that the true power really lies in the individual's perception and intention.
Yeah.
What works for one person might not work for another. The key is to find those personal rituals and practices that resonate with you and help you cultivate that sense of well-being.
This whole conversation has really shifted my perspective. I came in thinking this whole salt thing was a bit out there, but now I'm seeing it as like a gateway to this whole new way of thinking about mindfulness and self-care. It's not about the salt, it's about the intention.
That's beautifully put. It's like the salt is a symbol, a catalyst for exploring these deeper concepts and practices that can really enrich our lives. And who knows, maybe some people will find genuine benefit from the physical act of putting salt in their shoes.
I love that we're ending on this note of openness and possibility, because ultimately, isn't that what the deep dive is all about? Exploring these unconventional ideas, challenging assumptions, and discovering new ways to learn and grow.
Absolutely. And even if our listeners don't end up, sprinkling salt in their shoes, I hope this conversation has at least sparked some curiosity and inspired them to find their own unique salt in shoes moments. Those simple everyday practices that bring a sense of calm, grounding, and connection.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's leave our listeners with one final thought-provoking question. What's your salt in shoes? Like, what's that one little thing you do, maybe even something a little quirky, that just brings you a sense of calm, or helps you feel grounded?
That's such a great question to kind of reflect on. And it really doesn't have to be anything like elaborate or fancy or anything. It could be, as simple as listening to a certain song, or taking a walk in nature, or even just spending a few minutes with a beloved pet.
You know what? I think sometimes we kind of overcomplicate this whole self-care thing, We get caught up in the idea that it needs to be these big Instagrammable moments or whatever.
Right.
But really it's the consistent practices that make the biggest difference, I think, in the long run.
Absolutely. It's about tuning into what truly nourishes you, what helps you reconnect to yourself and find that sense of peace amidst all the chaos of daily life. And sometimes the most powerful practices are the ones that are already within reach, the ones we might even overlook because they seem too simple or too ordinary.
Yeah. So like we're training ourselves to notice those little sparks of joy and peace that are already present in our lives.
Yeah.
And maybe by sharing our own salt in shoes moments with each other, we can kind of inspire others to find theirs.
I love that idea. It's like we're creating this collective tapestry of well-being, woven together by these individual threads of simple yet profound practices.
And who knows, maybe someone listening to this will be inspired to finally try that meditation app they've been meaning to download, or to take a few minutes each day to just sit in silence and appreciate the beauty of their surroundings,
And that's the beauty of exploration, isn't it? We start with this seemingly strange concepts like putting salt in our shoes, and it leads us to these broader reflections on mindfulness and self-care and the power of intention.
I have to say, this has been one of my favorite deep dives yet. It's made me realize that there's so much more to discover, even in the most mundane aspects of our lives.
I agree. It's a reminder that the journey of self-discovery is ongoing, and there's always something new to learn, something new to try, something new to appreciate.
So to all of our listeners out there, we encourage you to embrace your curiosity, experiment with new ideas, and discover your own salt and shoes moments. And who knows, maybe you'll uncover something truly magical along the way.
And remember, the most important thing is to approach this journey with a sense of playfulness, kindness, and an open heart, because ultimately the greatest discoveries are often the ones that we make about ourselves.
Beautifully said. Well, on that inspiring note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive into the unexpected world of salt, shoes, and the power of intention. Thanks for joining us on this exploration. Until next time, stay curious, stay open, and keep seeking those little sparks of magic in your everyday life.